Hey guys, it's Ken. As you guys know, I've done a lot of videos about predictions, and I predicted that in the fourth quarter of this year, we're going to have a bit of a collapse. And I do believe that. And what do I mean by collapse? What I mean is there's going to be a lot of listings that are going to happen in the summer, starting in the summer and all the way through the year. In addition to that, we're going to have all these foreclosures. And so there are going to be a lot of homes that are going to come to market that wouldn't normally be in the market because of the fact that they're behind on their mortgages. There's going to be obviously the end of this eviction moratorium. So all that's going to happen here during this year, unless this can get kicked down the road again for the foreseeable future. But I don't believe that it will now that we have the vaccine rolled out, now that we have these mask mandates coming out. What I'm going to talk about now is probably the question I get asked the most is, okay, all that's well and good, but where should I be investing in 2021? And by the way, we are still investing this year. We invested last year and we're investing this year. So our company is still buying things. So yes, there are still opportunities. And no, the real estate market is not national. It's regional. So we have to take a look at what regional areas are going to boom and bust and try to go where we think that the market's going. In other words, where the migration patterns are going, which is what I talk a lot about. So in this video, I'm going to talk about what I think are the top markets and why. And hopefully you guys can make some good educated decisions on what you're going to do next with your hard-earned money or even your clients' money. So let's get right to it. So the first thing that I want to just go back to the basics on, and I talk a lot about this, is basic supply and demand. And I think a lot of you guys miss this. The fact is, right now, there's such a low number of inventory out there, and I just did a video on this. That's why prices are going up. There's low supply, high demand. And so these kinds of things you have to keep watching as you're starting to select your individual markets. And so there's lots of things that can affect your home prices. Obviously, interest rates are ultra low. Economic growth, which is down right now, but scheduled to boom again. Number of people in the households. Availability of mortgages. Now, this is an area that's squeezing down right now because of COVID. Lenders are starting to put in some additional restrictions around lending. Speculative demand, there's not a lot of that going on. New builds, they're trying, but as you know, guys, the cost of construction and all that stuff's being really, really high. The supply of housing, affordable housing, all that stuff rolls into what a housing price is and what it could be. And so I want you guys to always keep that top of mind, because what happens is a lot of times you get really wound up in your own individual market. You think next week or next month or next year even is going to be as good as this year, and it doesn't necessarily mean that's the case. And so what you need to keep your eye on is this real estate supply and demand here, that where are we in this curve? Now, nationally, you're going to have a number. In a county, in a state, in a city, in a submarket, you're going to have a number. And so I think that we're probably, in a lot of the markets that everybody's really talking about, you're probably somewhere right about in here where the prices are definitely going up and the quantity is definitely going down. And that's just the quantity and the price. And so you're always going to have to kind of monitor this. And the reason I'm bringing this up, guys, is because, as I said, I predicted that there's going to be 1 million to 1.5 million people that are going to list their homes, and it's going to really jump on the number of listings. And of course, what will happen is the quantity then will go up and the price will then go down in those particular submarkets. And so I think you got to be really careful with the advice that you guys are taking, because a lot of these people that are going through this right now have never been through a real correction before, like I was in the 90s and like I was in the 2008. This is exactly what happened. A little bit different. Obviously, we didn't have COVID, we didn't have quarantine, but regardless, the supply is going to hit the market at some point, and it's going to disrupt some of this stuff, and so you really got to be careful. And I just want to remind you that what we know is that these are kind of the numbers. In less than 6 months, a seller's market, prices will appreciate. In a neutral market, there's between 6 and 7 months of inventory. And in a buyer's market, there's typically greater than 7 months. And this data goes way back. So all you got to do is kind of take a look at the last video that we talked about, because we have a housing supply shortage, which is making it a seller's market right now, which is very good if you own a home and you're behind on your mortgage, because that's, I believe, is going to be the money that you're going to be able to need to be able to cash out and pay back that lender. So now let's go to the next slide. So I've talked about it before, but it has to be in this video too. These are the migration patterns. Where are people going? This is the most important thing that you guys need to know, because there are people leaving cities and there are people moving into cities, and there's all kinds of reasons why. Now, there's more than U-Haul and more than North American Van Lines. There's obviously Ryder trucks. There's all these different data points that you guys can actually find online. But as you can see, for the U-Haul, in 2020, Tennessee led the country with U-Hauls. And these are people that actually took a U-Haul and drove it to Tennessee and dropped it off. Texas was 2, Florida was 3, Ohio was Arizona, etc. You get the point. With North American Van Lines, the blue states are inbound, the red states are outbound. So the top inbound states, according to North American Van Lines, are Idaho, Arizona, South Carolina, Tennessee, and North Carolina. Okay, and the top outbound states were Illinois, New York, California, New Jersey, and Maryland. So you got to pay attention to this stuff, guys. Now, does this completely give you a full picture of where everybody's going? No, but it is a great picture. The U-Haul had 2 million moves in 2020, 2 million. So they had 2 million data points of people going from point A to point B. So this is information that you guys have to be following. What this does is it puts a lot of stress on a particular economy from a supply and demand standpoint. That's all it does. And so if these people are moving to Tennessee, and Tennessee doesn't have a lot of housing, as an example, it's going to drive housing up. So as you guys start to see these people move around the country, then you'll get a better sense of this. So no matter where you are, most of you are probably in one of these individual areas or focusing on them. Be very careful, because you definitely want to be where people are heading, because real estate is very dumb. Real estate doesn't care. Real estate is sitting there waiting for people to come. So now let's take a look at why people moved, because I think that's really important. And we're just now kind of getting the data around this. But why did people move? I think this is a big question. And so what we found is that 25% of all moves moved due to the pandemic, and 35% of the people moved because of financial. In fact, this data here, which I found, which was fascinating, this is on, it says, obviously Idaho was the top destination with twice as many people moving in than moving out. 5 out of 10 destination cities were in Florida and 4 on the Gulf Coast. So these are important things that you guys need to know. 68% more people left New York City in 2020 than moved into it. Can you imagine that? So all of a sudden, that's creating massive disruption in some areas and actually very exciting things in other areas if you are owning or buying. So the average move was 3.7 miles farther than the year before. Okay, so this is really important. What we found is, ironically, most people are actually moving within their own state. So they're somewhere between 70 and 80%. So let's take a look at COVID here. So as I said, 1/4 of Americans moved in 2020 because of the pandemic. 35% forced moves were out of financial hardship. And nearly 1/3 of those moved for family members that needed help during COVID. So let's look at the top reasons people moved in 2020. Obviously, they moved because of affordability. They moved because of safety. We just talked about the COVID numbers here. They moved for family, and they moved for weather. If you go take a look online, you're going to find all of that. And the safety here is obviously COVID, related, a lot of it. So the next thing I want to talk to you about is as people start to take a look at affordability here, and they're trying to figure out, where do I want to be? And there's more reasons that people move for affordability, obviously. But one of the big things that you have to consider is, are people going to rent or are they going to buy? So according to Realtor.com, these are the top 10 metros to rent a home, and these are the top metros to buy a home. And you can go right onto Realtor.com and find a lot of this information. So people are going to be faced with, do we rent or do we buy? And how they figure this out is based on the average mortgage or the average rent. That's how they figure it out. So you can go in and take a look at the average mortgage in these areas. Like San Jose is obviously very expensive at $1.2 million. So obviously it's going to be cheaper to rent. It's going to be significantly less than the mortgage, all the way over to Cleveland, Ohio, where the average home is $200,000. Can you imagine that? It's $1 million less in Cleveland, Ohio. Now, obviously it's Cleveland, Ohio too, and so you're going to want to have to move there. It's a very different area. But the point is you can start to take a look at, people are starting to make these decisions based on affordability. As there's a lot of people moving to Sacramento, as an example, and home prices are going up, it's going to force more people into the rental housing pool. And so what you want is a big distance between the rent and the mortgage. That's what you want as a real estate investor. You want a big gap between those two because it's going to have a bigger pool of renters. I can assure you, if you took a look at the renter pool in Austin or San Jose, it's going to be significantly higher than that in Cleveland, Ohio, as an example, because more people are going to buy a home in Cleveland, Ohio, as opposed to rent. So there's a lot of talk about prices going up and rents going up, and that basically is all the headlines. But what's not talked a lot about is what areas are falling, because you can't have this stuff happening. You can't have prices going up like crazy in some areas and not falling in other areas. So it's important that you look at both sides of the coin, and you got to be careful, as I say, not to catch a falling knife. And so, as you guys know, the national inventory declined. National inventory declined by almost 50% in 1 year. And the inventory of newly listed properties declined by 24.5% and 23.5% for large metros. The national median listing price was $353,000. This is up 13.7% compared to last year. This is a big jump in housing prices. And for those of you who own houses, congratulations. For those of you that own rentals, congratulations. That's all good. But what you really need to be careful of is these other things that I found here. These are counties where rents have fallen the most so far. So let's take a look. So obviously, number one, San Francisco, 25%. Rents have fallen in San Francisco, 25%. Number two is New York at almost 20%. Number three is San Mateo, 18%. Honolulu is number 9 at 9%. You get the point. So the point is, guys, if you're in those markets, I personally think that there's going to be a continued fall in rents. And what that's going to do, it's going to be good in a lot of areas. People are going to move back into those areas at some point. So keep your eye on this stuff, because these are markets that are definitely going to be ripe for investment at some point in the future. But again, you want to be careful not to catch a falling knife. This is another graphic that I wanted to show you guys. These are where home prices are falling. Now, nobody talks about this stuff, but they're definitely falling in these markets. Destin, Florida, they're falling. Honolulu, they're falling. Bloomington, Illinois, Erie, Pennsylvania. I think that you guys just need to be cognizant the fact that these prices are falling. Now, there's a multitude of reasons, and we're not going to go into them now, but that's why I started with the supply and demand piece. Clearly, there's more people moving out of these areas, and there's more supply. That's the only reason that they would be falling at this time. So now I'm going to talk to you guys about where I think you should be looking at in 2021, which is the question I get the most. And that is what I'm calling the fringe markets. These are the top fringe markets. And I'm going to go over these in a minute, but what are fringe markets? Fringe markets are this. There are areas like, think of San Francisco. A fringe market in San Francisco is going to be 1 to 2 hours away. There are going to be people that are going to be moving out of San Francisco and moving into what I would call these fringe markets. This is where the action is going to be. This is where you're going to make money. This is where people are going generally. 70 to 80% of the people are moving within the state. So what I want to show you here is one of the top fringe markets is Stockton, California, as an example. It's #1. So you can find this on realtor.com. They're going to start talking about these fringe markets a lot more. And this is where people are moving and where they're buying right now. So the average median days on the market is 37, and the average home is $480,000. Now, that does seem like a lot. Stockton, California is 70 miles from San Francisco. The average price we just showed you in the San Jose area is $1.2 million. So these people are cashing out of a $1.2 million home or a $2 million home, and they're moving to Stockton, California, which is not very far away, maybe an hour, hour and a half, and they're living there and they're planting there and they're getting out of these big mortgage payments and they're getting out of these big rent payments. The same thing can be tracked, guys, on the rent side. As you can start to see, as I showed you, San Francisco rents are down 25%. They're definitely moving to other areas, and they're going to create more demand in that area. As the supply dwindles up, then those rents will go up over time as well. And so the whole point is, where are people going? You can also take a look at Vallejo, California, same thing, 525,000, also a submarket of San Francisco. So as you guys start to take a look at these markets, what I really want you to pay attention to is what core markets are losing people. Let's just pick on San Francisco, and where are they going? And those are the new bubbles. Those are the fringe markets that you guys want to take a look at. You want to see where the people are heading. Now, obviously, it's going to be difficult to figure all this out, but if you take the time and you're out in front of this, you will make money in Stockton. You will make money in Vallejo. And as more and more people move out of San Francisco, as an example, it's going to continue to drive these prices up. So as I like to quote the great Wayne Gretzky, and I've messed it up a couple times, I skate to where the puck is going to be, not to where it has been. And this is never more true than right now. A lot of people are going to jump to an area like Austin, Texas that is totally on fire. And we already showed you it's probably not a good place to buy. It's probably a better place to rent. You got to find out, where is that next place going to be? And that's why I showed you some of these markets here. Just shoot over to realtor.com, do your own research, figure it out for yourself. Check out where the migration patterns are. You can drill down and actually take a look at what cities are undersupplied and where people are going and where employers are going. And that's what you want to be, is you want to be in front of this, and you definitely want to skate to where the puck is going to be and not where it has been. So thanks, guys.